Our economy continues to expand and is operating above levels that would have been predicted pre-pandemic. It's fair to say, by any traditional metric, we have experienced one of the quickest recoveries in our modern history.
It's all about how you look at it, I guess, right? Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen touting the Biden administration's economic accomplishments and recovery during a tour that was at a Ford plant in Michigan. But are Americans feeling the effects of this so-called economic recovery, as the secretary was pointing out? Let's ask the panel. Jack Brewer, Amy Tarkanian, Bobby Everly standing by. Bobby, I'll start with you on this one here. Your thoughts as we react to Janet Yellen, her remarks. I mean, even if you look at some of the polling, again, inflation still at a 40-year high.
Right. And you have to wonder, I mean, who sits down in these meetings and tells these people that this is a good thing to say when she talks about the expanding economy? We've had 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, a recession. It's receding. That's just the facts. And they flat out ignore it, and they expect people to buy it. And as you said, the polling across the country, it's unanimous. Well, even in my county of Fort Bend County outside of Houston, you talk about the #1 issue, it's the economy, it's jobs, it's inflation. People have less money to spend. That gives them less freedom, less power to manage their own lives. It's the #1 issue, and the White House is scrambling. That's why you see all the attacks going against former President Trump and not addressing the main issues that concern people because they have no ideas, no solutions.
Yeah, it's been above 8% inflation since March of 2022. The highest was there in June. And many wonder, because the prices are so expensive, you're buying less. Is that why inflation is less? And that's one of the trajectories that you have to look at over time, and that's going to take time. You go to polling, Bobby, you're talking about that. I'll go to Amy next on this. A Gallup poll that we can show the viewers. Inflation now causing hardship for a majority of Americans. 56% say rising prices are causing hardship. That's up from 45% in November of last year. The severity, again, goes up as well. And then, as Bobby pointed out, Quinnipiac poll, most urgent issue facing the country today, respondents say inflation, 27%. Amy Tarkanian, does the White House look at these polling before they go on air and before they address Americans?
I'm sure they do, but that's why they deny, deflect, and deflate. And, we know that you just mentioned, the 2 consecutive negative quarters usually means it's a recession, but they're not going to call it a recession. They called it a period of transition in which growth is slowing. I mean, they're just changing the definition of words. And we know that we are hurting. We can feel it. We can see it in our bank accounts. And I'm surprised that it's actually the numbers in that poll are that low. And I know that they only polled, I think it was roughly 1,500 people. I guarantee you it's much higher than what this Gallup poll is showing. And the fact that Janet Yellen is actually saying that our plan has worked, and she's touting the supposed success of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan and the $740 billion Inflation Reduction Act, which we know did not reduce inflation. We can see it. We can feel it. We know that we can't pay all of our bills. And we know that our gas prices are up. We see the empty shelves in the grocery stores. These people are lying, and it's crazy.
Jack, I'll bring you into this, too, in something I believe one of your program focuses on, too. You talk a lot about inner city children, and you think about families that may be on fixed incomes, right, or families, single-parent households. Maybe they're working in service industries. They're not going to, their wages aren't matching up to these inflation amounts. They have to cut at some point. They're not enjoying the fruits that Secretary Janet Yellen is touting from that Michigan plant.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, I can think of dozens of our kids just right down the street here in Florida where, their families can't afford to buy them new shoes when their feet grow. Their families can't afford to always buy meat and put it on the table because of the price and what inflation has really done. And so you start talking about Americans that get up and go to work every day not being able to get the basics that they need in our nation. To hear the Fed chairman say this is just a slap in the face to so many hardworking, underserved Americans. And it's just not right to have this type of rhetoric. It's like a dark spirit that they all are carrying right now in this White House at the Federal Reserve, where they're trying to deceive the American people when we all can just look into the homes and see. But again, their problem is they're so out of touch. This White House is out of touch. This Fed Reserve is out of touch. When's the last time you think they went into an inner city neighborhood or went in to actually see how Americans are living? They don't do those type of things because they've removed themselves from the service of people. And so I'm just so glad that you guys are highlighting this because for the folks that I help and represent and who God's ordained me to oversee, they're hurting. And we're feeding them and helping them each and every day.
Look, that's where I'm a product of that. That's where I came from. I was raised by a single mother. She was a waitress at Applebee's. I mean, we barely got by, and even early on in my career, barely got by. I understand this stuff, and congratulations on anyone that has success, but never forget where you came from. And if you didn't come from that, talk to those who did, and they'll tell you what it's really like. I'll switch topics really quick, and I'll close on this. Bobby Eberle, you may have seen my interview with Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Yentis, who was at the Pentagon. Right. He is one of the survivors at the Pentagon. I understand you have a story.
Yeah, it was just interesting because I was actually there in D.C. on 9/11, and I saw Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. And as he mentioned, anyone that's associated with the Pentagon, they knew what was going on. I saw a clip of the first plane hitting the tower. On the radio, driving to near the Pentagon, I heard the report of the second plane. So we knew what was happening. And then I was sitting in this convertible, beautiful blue sky in Virginia, and Flight 77 flew over my head, left shoulder to right, hitting the Pentagon. I was actually closer to the plane than I was to the Pentagon. And it's something that still shocks me to this day and inspires me to try and help the country, because you're never in that situation where you actually see people perish, and it's something I'll never forget.
No, and thank you for sharing that. I can't only imagine seeing one of those flights or any of it. That will stick with you. Very important to never forget. Our coverage will happen Sunday starting at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Bobby Eberle, thanks for sharing that personal story. Jack Brewer, Amy Tarkanian, always a pleasure. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you for your time.
You as well.